Hello, I'm Larry, and this is Carter's Country. Really excited to have Brett with us here from Hux Works today. We're going to talk about the world of suppressors. It's a world that I'm just now getting clued into. I think it's a fantastic time for the suppressor industry right now.
Oh, yeah.
Those ridiculous wait times are a thing of the past on getting tax stamps. And I think maybe even more importantly than that, people are realizing all the benefits that suppressors offer. It's not just oh, cool, I'm going to make my gun quiet. Tell us a little bit about Huxwrx products and just some of your own thoughts about suppressors in general.
Sure, absolutely. So I've worked for Huxwrx for almost 3 years now. I've been an NFA collector shooter for probably 15 to 18 years now.
God, you don't look old enough. I wouldn't even sell you a beer without an ID. Good Lord. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So suppressors, short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns. I kind of nerd out over the mechanics of how they work and, gas systems and how guns run suppressed when they're gas guns, bolt guns, pistols, that whole kind of thing. Huxwrx stands for Human Exposure Workshop. A lot of people don't know that, and we are a safety company. For us, suppression is more than just reducing the report of the firearm. It's the effect of discharging a weapon on the shooter who is functioning the weapon. Being a safety company, focusing on things like toxic gases that you breathe in, the heavy metals that get on your skin that you also breathe in. It's more than just how do we make this quiet, right? That's the human side of it. And then when you look at our proprietary technology called flow-through technology, we take the weapon system health, so to speak, into consideration as well. Obviously, being a gas gun, it's reliant on gas pressure to make it cycle. But then when you suppress it, what are we doing to that gas system to make it cycle reliably? So a lot goes into it.
Yeah, that's the engineering aspect of it is lost on laymen like me because I pull the trigger, the gun goes off, it's quiet because the suppressor's on the end. That's it. I don't think anybody could probably fully appreciate just how much goes into that guys at Huxwrx do to make that all happen.
Right. So when you talk about the engineering behind it, our R&D team, engineering guys, are just out of this world. The knowledge and the detail in which they go through. Partially, they're able to do that because of 3D printing. The majority of our suppressors are entirely 3D printed, or the core parts are 3D printed as well. The benefits of that are you can 3D print shapes that you can't CNC machine. Right. If you print something so small, you can print shapes that a tool wouldn't be able to get into on a machine and actually remove metal and make a shape that you're trying to achieve. With 3D printing, it also allows us to do rapid prototyping. So if they print a can one night, they get it in the R&D lab the next day, they're shooting it, and they say, you know what, the numbers we're getting from this test, or the way this sounds, the way this gun is acting, we just don't like it, they can make a change, hit print, have another one ready to go the next morning.
Wow.
So it allows them to be really, really particular about the end product that the customer finally gets their hands on. So when we started at 22 is kind of the gateway to suppressor ownership for a lot of people. People, oftentimes at demos or events will come up and say, hey, I've been looking at suppressors for a while, I don't have one yet, what would you suggest I get? And taking into account cost, taking into account the fun rate, I call it, the amount of fun you have with the Suppress 22 is probably the most fun you'll ever have suppressed.
Not only because it can get whisper quiet with the right ammo and things, but you tend to want to play a lot more.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
so the 22, the cost of the ammo
is a lot cheaper.
Definitely makes that more doable, I guess. But it also, going back to something, it speaks to the things the suppressor does for the shooter and enhancing their experience with it. You don't realize the impact the noise is having on you, even if you're past the point of flinching and all that. You don't realize that the sound of that report, what it still kind of does to you, even if it doesn't affect your shot, it's still just not a pleasant thing.
No, it's not. A lot of people look at a suppressor and the first question they have is, well, how quiet is it? And obviously the name suppressor, silencer, whatever you want to call it, and the way we've been kind of trained to the movies that it's Hollywood quiet, that isn't always the end result, nor is it always achievable with certain calibers. When you start getting up into big stuff like .338 Lapua, well, to have a suppressor that's hearing safe is going to be as big as the gun is, right?
Right.
So there's a give and take, and you talk about being new into suppressors. I tell people who are new into it, it's a sliding scale. You have a couple factors that come into play, and if you go too far one way, it kind of takes away from the other. So if you want, a suppressor that's full auto rated that you can just mag dump or put on the end of a machine gun, it's probably going to be made out of a very heavy material, so you kind of have to sacrifice a heavier can on the end of your gun,
right,
but you get the durability. If you want maximum quiet, depending on the caliber, that can may be massive. So again, you give up size for quiet, right?
Right.
Generally, the more volume a can has, the quieter it's going to be. And then when you look at price versus the material it's printed out, let's say you want ultralight weight and you want titanium, that suppressor is probably going to cost a little bit more.
Well, sure.
So cost, weight, general size, and how quiet it is are kind of the four sliding spectrums that you have to pick and choose, what am I going to suppress and what's the purpose of it? And then you kind of decide, okay, what's my budget? And you go from there. Most 22 suppressors are going to fall within a range of probably $200 to $500 MSRP, right? So you kind of have a set parameter on the lower end of cost. And then you can pick, hey, do I want one that's just 22? Do I want one that's 22 mag? Do I want one that's 5.7 rated? Do I need one that's full auto 5.7 rated, right?
Right.
Do I need something lightweight? And so you kind of can pick, and it's the easiest one to kind of get that practice out of choosing what's going to fit my end goal, what I'm trying to do.
And I think part of that for the customer to make an informed decision is to fully understand all the benefits that the suppressor bring. You talked about the concussive, effects and how it can reduce that. Knowing everything that suppressor can do for you would go a long way to me to make an intelligent decision about which of those benefits are most important to me, and so which suppressor does that point me to. And thankfully, we got people like you guys to say, well, okay, we can do that. Here it is.
Right, and that's we just in this talking about now we just touched on weapon system and the end user, but a lot of people who hunt big game, a lot of ranches now are requiring suppressor use because as you shoot around, that report runs game off to the ranches and they lose quantity of eligible animals on their ranch. So a lot of them are requiring it now. So with your hunting, oftentimes that allow you a follow-up shot or two, depending on how far you're shooting, to give you a chance to have an opportunity to take the game you were trying to get in the first place.
I think that's another thing that people new into the suppressor market, that's another benefit that they probably don't even think of when they first get into it.
Communication, right? So whether you're, if you're shooting a competition and you have a spotter and you're the shooter, being able to communicate back and forth with your ears not ringing or, loud concussive force of ears, that gives you that ability. And likewise, if you're out, hog hunting, which we have a lot of here in Texas, with your friends, being able to talk and communicate where everybody is while you're hunting without ear pro on makes life significantly easier and safer.
Again, just another benefit that you don't think of unless you go down this wormhole a little bit about everything that this thing changes once you put it on a gun.
Yeah, but I would tell the people that would watch your channel or that come to sort of buy suppressors, identify the caliber you would want to suppress first.
Right.
Figure out what your budget is, how often you're going to use it, and what you're going to put it on, and then kind of go from there. We can just make it really simple, and that's the first one. Obviously, you're making a purchase you're going to keep your entire life theoretically, right? With the paperwork involved. But you have the ability to course correct if you buy one and say, you know what, I got this one. I love this about it, but I don't love this about it. Well, when you go buy the next caliber, because no one ever stops at 22. It starts at 22. I didn't.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going. So it gives you an opportunity to course correct and say, hey, I love this, but maybe my end goal with this weapon system, what I'm hunting, whether I'm competitive shooting, maybe I need a lighter suppression than what I got the first time around, and you can change and try something different, all the way from the mounts to the material the can's made of to whether it has flow-through technology or not. There's a lot of options to look at for the end user these days.
Obviously, we've got a fantastic example here of a really well put together gun that when I see things like this, I'm like, man, I don't have nearly enough stuff on my AR. But
maybe I have too much.
There's never too much, Brett. The thing that I was going to ask you is, let's say this is AR-10, it's in 308. And then I went and buy me a Ruger Gen 2 American, little short-barreled bolt action in 308. Would I just move this to that? Or what's the difference between bolt action and gas as far as how it affects the suppressor or how it acts with the suppressor?
So this is kind of a two-part answer, and I'll break it down. With rifles, because in general, the rifle barrels don't move, and they're not required to move for the cycling of the weapon system. So you could literally unscrew the suppressor, take it over to your Ruger American Gen 2 bolt gun, and screw it on and go to town and have fun with it. That's all you have. That's literally all you have to do.
Fantastic.
Now, before we move on to the second part of this, I would suggest to the majority of people, if you're going to buy a suppressor and it's going to live on a gun the majority of its time, direct threading is a great way to go. It saves weight, it's less parts, and it's cheaper. If you plan on jumping your suppressor from gun to gun, the chance of you cross-threading is greater as you screw fine threads off and on.
Right.
At that point, I would suggest going to a muzzle device. Not that it's intended to be sacrificial, that you're going to wear it out, but it gives you a coarse, large thread that can be sacrificial that you can screw off and onto, and if it does cross-thread, you just throw it out and buy another one versus having to have a barrel recut, which tends to be a lot bigger of an issue.
So you're basically protecting the finer threads that are on that.
by giving you a coarse thread
Okay.
that is not as particular. The angle in which you screw it on in the dark when you're getting out of the truck to go in the deer blind, it's not like you're trying to find a fine thread in the middle of the night. Now, talking about jumping at gun to gun and does it affect how the weapon system functions, that's rifles. When you get into pistols, things like Beretta 92s that generally have a fixed barrel, right? The barrels don't move, you can direct thread those. When you get into your 1911s, your Glocks, your various SIG platforms, your HK stuff like the Walther PPQ 22 we have here. 22 is not as much, but some do. You have to have what's called a Nielsen device in the suppressor.
Nielsen device.
Nielsen device, or a booster is what we generally refer to it as. And it's going to have threads, but there's also going to be a spring inside that housing. And why that's required is when the slide comes back in the cycling of the pistol, the barrel tends to come back a little bit and then tilt up, right? That's how it cycles. If the barrel has to pull the weight of the suppressor with it instantaneously as it's coming back, it'll 99% of the time cause a malfunction.
Okay.
That spring allows the slide to come back a little bit and the barrel to start tilting, the barrel to come back, and it's not an instant shock to the barrel because that spring has give, and then the suppressor catches up with it and the gun can cycle.
Trust me, if you think you know about these things, the more you know, the less you understand. and so, yeah, if you've just delved into this a little bit, go further, you're going to be shocked.
Yeah,
I can say that
there's a lot to learn for sure.
Like, until I met you today, I did not know being around suppressors prevented aging. So that's another thing I learned. That's pretty cool. I wish I'd have got into this years ago.
Huxwrx doesn't guarantee that, but we like to think
It's
that's
not
accurate.
okay. That's a little disclaimer there. That's always good to put those in there. Now, one thing that I mentioned, and we, I guess maybe, or I took for granted that people just are familiar with it, was the evil phrase tax stamp. There's a tax stamp required to go through the background check that allows you to buy a suppressor. Explain a little bit about the process somebody goes through to get approved to buy the suppressor. Just in general terms, what's that experience?
Sure, and if you were to ask me what are the pros and cons of owning a suppressor or getting one, we've listed all the pros already.
Right.
And I don't know that I would even consider this a con. It's an inconvenience really for the most part. And unfortunately at this time it's a necessary part of suppressor ownership with the laws being the way they are. So let's say a customer comes in and says, hey, I want to buy our Huxwrx Flow 762 Ti for a bolt gun that I'm doing for a hunt. Fantastic. You know what color you want? Sure, I'll take black. Awesome. Go to the back room. Your guy comes back. I have this serial number. You don't look it over, make sure you're good with it. You say, okay, great. This one's perfect. Now we start the ATF paperwork, right? So there's a couple different ways that to keep it kind of 3,000 foot view. A couple different ways. You can do it as an individual, where you yourself is buying it, you will retain ownership of it, and if the suppressor goes anywhere, you have to go to that place with it, right? Or you can do it as what's called a trust. A trust would allow you to pick your family members, your friends, anyone you want to be able to use a suppressor when you're not around.
Okay.
So let's say you have kids, your son or daughter are going to go hunting with it, and they're going to be a couple deer blinds over. They're going hunting a different weekend, and they want to take it. If they're on that trust, they have the suppressor, they are legally allowed to take that suppressor with them without you being present. So you'll fill out your paperwork, whether you're doing an individual or you're doing a trust. You will complete the paperwork. There are fingerprints and photos involved, which I assume you probably have a way to take fingerprints and photos here.
We've got that here. We haven't been in the suppressor game long, but yeah, we have the fingerprint and photo capabilities here, so
Awesome.
we can take care of everything for you on site.
Fantastic. And then along with the fingerprints and photos, the one who is purchasing the suppressor has to write a $200 check or credit card information for the ATF for their tax stamp that comes with it. Now, for most people who think the dealer doesn't keep that money goes to the ATF, that goes to the federal government. That covers the cost of what you're paying for a suppressor, and we can go down a whole rabbit hole of how that even started in the first place. Yeah. But those are the things that'll be required. So it's not a huge problem. It's not a year's worth of paperwork, especially with wait times the way they are right now. I'm seeing anywhere from 48 hours to about 2 weeks on approval times.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. 3 to 4 days seems to be about the
That's the
average now.
fastest it has ever been.
Yeah,
for years it was 12 to 16 months, which means you would buy your suppressor, the dealer would hold on to it for 12 or 16 months until you got an approval, then you could go pick it up and actually take possession of it. Here, like I said, you're 48 hours to 2 weeks max that they will have it, then you go back and get it from them. If a customer comes in and wants to buy a suppressor and they're going to put it on 5 guns, well, I don't really have the money to buy all the mounts right now. Well, you have 2 weeks to figure that out. So you don't have to buy it all right now. You're just doing the paperwork on the suppressor.
Yeah.
So that a little bit less financial burden on the end user as well.
On that initial hit,
Yeah.
Great information, Brett. I little peek behind the scenes. I kept him waiting. I was running late today. Dog was at the vet. Dog's fine. Don't worry about it. But yeah, thank you for waiting. Thanks for your patience and for coming out.
Happy to help.
Extremely informative video. I think that people are going to get a lot out of. And we certainly would have not been able to have that without you sitting in that chair giving it to us.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Really great stuff.
Hopefully it helps people kind of take that leap, and if they have some hesitancy or fears about it, this kind of puts it to rest, and they get to enjoy all the fun that the rest of us do.
Yeah, to anybody out there that's not sure if you want to do this or not, just trust me, you do.
Start with the 22. It's the cheapest barrier to entry, as we call it.
Yeah.
And it's the most fun you can have, and especially with people who are trying to get the younger generation to shooting, young kids that want to shoot.
Right.
Shooting suppressed, especially at 22, that's like shooting a BB gun.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and calm down. I'll wrap up as soon as I'm through with this last point. Having taught 3 boys to shoot as they grew up, you realize in there that the recoil isn't really what causes the flinching, it's the noise.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, that once you shoot a gun suppressed, man, everything about you just relaxes, because you're just like, oh, that's just
pleasant.
fun. That's all it is. It's just fun. Even for me, the thousands of rounds I've shot through the years, the first time I fired a suppressed pistol, it was like, I just giggled.
You laugh.
I was like
Everyone
a
laughs.
little kid. I was like, this
Everyone
is ridiculous.
laughs. Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much I tensed up even shooting something like a 22, that all just went away with the first shot,
Yeah.
man. It was just great.
Everyone laughs the first time they shoot suppressed.
Yeah,
It's a standard.
The 22 is like that little sampler you get at the mall food court, where as soon as you have that, next thing you know, you got a half a pound of glazed chicken on your plate. That's the 22 suppressor.
Yes, it is. You are correct.
That's the food court sampler right there. All right, guys. Well, if you didn't learn anything out of this video, it's your own fault. Watch it again. Remember, if you've ever shot, or hunted with us, you're already a part of the Carter's Country family. Till next time, adios. Oh, if y'all could see the outtakes.
It was perfect. It was perfect.